Okay. Okay guys, this one's going to be a little bit of weathering and hopefully some gloss coat. Let's start off with just showing you where we're up to with this and what happened. Let me just zoom out a bit here for you. So we were having a bit of trouble with the band on the back. I haven't done anything to it. I haven't touched it up. You can still see a little bit of overspray there at the moment. It self-leveled in the end quite well. So that was a bit lucky. This needs a little bit of brush touch, which I'm going to have to do in a little bit. And because I had trouble with that, I didn't end up binning that paint. It just wasn't worth the grief of keeping it. Which of course created the challenge about how I was going to paint the nose, because I forgot to paint the propeller spinner. So I dug this out of my stash, which is another paint set I've got. This is Tarka's lacquer paints, which are actually quite nice, I have to say. I don't mind these. They're a bit hard to get hold of in Australia, which is why you won't see them. I've got a few of these sets, but I don't have individual ones because they're hard to get hold of. Anyway, it has the same colour. And fortunately, it's almost an identical match. So the two colours, Life Colour and Tarka, ended up with a very similar mix in the end. So that worked out fine. So what am I planning to do tonight? Just a little bit of light weathering on some of the panel lines, and I'll show you how I do that. And if I can get that done, very light touch up on a couple of those marks with the back there, and then I'd like to try and put some gloss coat on this so that I can have it ready to put some decals on. I was going to use a lacquer based gloss coat, but I've got this, no, not that one actually, tell a lie. I've got this one. Maybe I haven't got any of the others. I thought I had some more gloss coat. I'll have another look a bit later before I famously say I haven't. But if not, I'm going to try and use up a bit of this bottle, which I've already started using, which is Kratex Colours UVLS Clear. This is basically what Mission Models Clear is, by the way, if you're wondering. So for the next bit, let's talk about doing the actual weathering. Just give me a sec. So the two colours I tend to go to for this is dark grey and deck brown. And the other magic ingredient we're going to use in the Spanish style of weathering is this, which is isopropyl alcohol. Got a big bottle of it. Now this stuff can be used to thin paints as well. The reason I'm using it for this project is because it sprays slightly different and it actually leaves a slightly different finish on the model, which is more desirable, I think, for the sort of effect I'm going for here. So I'm just going to take some isopropyl alcohol. It's more than enough. And just put the lid on that so I don't end up accidentally spilling it. I think we'll start with the grey. I'll add the brown a little bit later. So this is just to me is Panzer Grey. That's what most people end up using, Panzer Grey. So we'll just give it a stir. This is from their standard range. It's not their lacquer, it's just their alcohol or acrylic based paint, which is what I want for this. Okay. Mix that up. Now I'm not going to put that straight in the paint cup, which you might think I would do. Hopefully this will make sense in a bit. Let's get my plane out of the way. Okay, I'm going to grab a brush, dip it in paint like so, and then I'm just going to mix that into the isopropyl alcohol, almost like you're washing your brush. And you can see that's quite a thin mix. It's show you that. I can just sort of see what sort of level I've got. Wait just a bit more. There we go, that'll do. Very thin. Next up is our model. I'm going to be using a 0.2 needle for the airbrush. I'm going to lower the airbrush air pressure down quite low. I'll give you a readout in a sec. I'm just going to dial it in first. Put a little bit of this very thin paint. Let's do another test paint spray. Okay. We'll just see how that goes. We're going to have to dial it in a bit here and then I'll let you know what the pressure was. Got the air pressure up too high. Now the great thing about this isopropyl alcohol is it evaporates very quickly. Even on a day like today, well not evening like I'm doing this project now, where it's actually quite it's actually quite cold, and so it's still evaporating nicely. Add a little bit more. It's just a bit of an experiment here just till I get it where I want it. Nearly there. Dial the pressure down a bit more. Make sure it's working. Whoop, overdid that there. It's a little bit too low. Try again. It looks like it's about right now. Doesn't look too bad. It's very thin, and that allows me to get sort of variations in the colour. So I can sort of dirty up the panels by by effectively tinting them is what I'm doing. And I'm also putting multiple coats on the panel lines just to make them a little bit more prominent. Let's see if I can zoom in a bit on this for you. So you can just sort of dial it in a bit. You can, oops, sorry, I'm off camera there. You can use this technique as many times as you feel you want to. You can vary it a bit, no problem. And you don't have to make this consistent across the whole model, how much you apply, because frankly I think it looks better if you don't. It looks a little bit more realistic. You don't have to try and make it uniform. The spots I've just done a little bit too much, and I'll just go back and touch them up in a bit. Alright, so if the camera will focus, that's one panel, and I haven't really done that side yet. So you can see it's very subtle. A couple of spots I've overdone, I'll just have to go and touch them up a little bit. But just run out. Okay. Again, you don't have to go crazy with this. It's just a way to put a little bit of subtle weathering in. So, right, so that's the underneath done. It's subtle, but it's there. The camera probably shows it up more actually than it looks in person, to be honest. Alright, just a little bit on that. Okay, so I'm going to do the top surfaces now, but because we've got darker colours as well as the green, sorry, my camera's having trouble focusing tonight. I'm going to make a little bit of a subtle change to the colour I'm spraying. So let me just put the model aside for a sec. And that's where the Deck Tan is going to come in handy. A bit of a stir. It's amazing actually how often I do end up using Deck Tan for things. It's one of those sort of browns that works well for a lot of projects, but I never use it on ships because I don't build any ships. I've got some ships in the stash, I haven't done them though. Okay, so I'm just mixing that in. Just add a little bit more of a dirt colour rather than a pure grey. Again, very subtle, not trying to overdo it. Just a bit darker because we've got a darker camouflage pattern on the upper surfaces and it won't show up otherwise. Okay. Sprayed it through. And let's see how we go with the wings on this one. I'm going to start with the ailerons. Yeah, looks right. Okay, let's try and do some panel lines so you can see those. So we'll start on the wings because it's easier than anywhere else. You can also apply a bit on the camouflage if you want in different spots, just to create a little bit more of a mottled effect if you want. Obviously, if you want more weathering, you can either apply more coats, or you can mix up a thicker coat or a mix of base formula on, sort of keeping it reasonably subtle. But how far you go with this technique is really up to you. You can certainly go nuts with it. Okay. If you can see the difference. You look over here and you look here, you can see there's a little bit of a shadow on this right wing. It is subtle. As I said, I don't really want to overdo it, but it is there. You can always add your panel line washes and things like that as well on top of this, depending on what effect you're after. Alright, let's try doing the other wing. The other thing I can say, you'll notice I'm doing it similar but not the same, and that's also intentional because I don't want the wings to look like mirrors of each other when it comes to the weathering. I want them to look like they're similar, not necessarily the same. Just putting a little bit of shading on a couple of bits there. Okay, so we'll just keep doing this around the fuselage. This dries very quickly, by the way, because we're using an isopropyl alcohol. So once you feel comfortable with this technique, it's a pretty fast process. Alright, so there's the side done. Into this side now. This. Okay. Don't have to do particularly precise if you don't want to. That's one of the advantages of using a very light mix. And you can also use this over your decals too, by the way. So you may see me use this technique again a little bit later once all the markings are on, just to blend them in a bit. And we just got the tail to go. All right. Okay, let's just put the camera back a bit for you. There you go. As you can see, it's a fairly subtle effect, but I think you can see, once it's all combined, you can see what I've done. And I do think the camera kind of exaggerates it a little bit compared to what I can see as well. Thanks, mate. I appreciate the comment about the colours. Yeah, I think they've come together all right. Now, the big test is going to be the next step, which is going to be the varnishing, because that's going to, by default, dull down the colours, and it's going to sort of blend them a little bit more. So we're going to just have to see how it goes. I typically use an acrylic-based lacquer for these sorts of things because I find them a little bit more durable once they've dried, as far as the sort of enamel washes and things I might use afterwards. But you can use the lacquer ones, you just got to give them enough time. I was originally going to use this one, for example, but I just had this in the stash and it was already being used, so I thought I might as well keep going. So if you haven't heard of this brand, by the way, this is Kratex Colours. These guys are really big in the spray painting business for cars and motorcycles and painting helmets and all that kind of thing. So motorcycle fuel tanks, any sort of airbrush artist that does those sort of really lovely murals and things like that, they often use the Kratex Colours product. And there's a very strong rumour, which I think is probably 99% true, which is that Mission Models is effectively made by Kratex for them. So I found them to behave identical, and if you want a cheap version of the Mission Models varnish, then you just get the Kratex one. Even if you're not a fan of Mission Models, I know a lot of people aren't, and I get why, these are quite good and they're reasonably priced. You can get them in the really big 200 milliliter bottles, like this size bottle as well if you want. I also don't mind the Vallejo ones either, but I've just got this one. They're quite affordable, and if you're near an automotive spray paint place, you can pick these up, and any size bottle you want, really. You probably find it harder to get the smaller bottles, to be honest, since those guys usually spray much bigger subjects than we do. Now, the thing with it, the one thing you do need to have with it, I believe, is what's the thinner, or as it's called, reducer in that industry. And I do recommend using their brand with it. Just ask for the right one. There's two different ones that Kratex makes. Both work with it. If you try and use some of your other thinners that you have in your stash, it could well work. I'm not saying it won't, but it could go very badly as well. So if you do decide you want to use some of your other thinners that you've got for your other brands, certainly you want to test it first before you spray it onto your model that you're working on, or things could go really wrong. As you can probably hear too, this comes with a shaker, which is nice. I'm just going to go and get a mixing cup. And I'll show you what this looks like when you take it straight out of the bottle. So we'll put 30 drops and we'll show you what it looks like. Make sure it's clear. You can't see it. Hang on. Move it around here a bit. Right, so I'm just going to pour it. You can see it's quite thick. Is the point I was trying to make. Way too thick to put through an airbrush. So we are going to thin it. This is one of their few products that I thin 50% also. I don't thin Mission model paints that way. I use a different formula, which we might talk about another time. But for now, because we're talking about clear coats, let's just get a paint stirrer here. I won't use any flow aid or any other sort of product with this. This is just going to be the varnish and the thinners, or the reducer as it's called. And I'm just checking this varnish is still okay. It's looking a bit crusty, to be honest. I think it is okay. No, it's not. This varnish is actually... Now, this is the problem with Cratex. It's also the problem with Mission models. So it's probably a good example to show you anyway. This has been in my stash for a fair while. As I said, it's about halfway used. And it's actually started to go off. And the way I can tell, if you have a look at the side of my cup, and this is why it's a good idea to do this in a cup and not do it straight into your airbrush, you can see all those, on the side of the brush, you can see all those little bits of flake on the side there. That's the varnish doing that. The varnish isn't actually mixing properly. So if I try and spray that on the model, it's going to be an absolute disaster. So we've learnt that that is expired. So we won't use that. Put that one, pull that out and get rid of that. I'll just clean my paint stirrer because I will have to repurpose that. Alright, so give me a second. I'll grab another varnish and I'll show you which we will use. There we go. Alright. This is the other varnish that I've been using recently. I do like. This is called VMS, and this is their gloss varnish. You can spray this straight out of the bottle if you want, and it will spray just fine. Or you can thin it a bit. And I don't know what it is about me. I don't know if I really do need to thin this, to be perfectly honest. It's pretty good. But just some part of me says I should. So let's show you what it looks like. The VMS varnishes are extremely good. So if you want an acrylic based varnish, a non-lacquer one that's not going to stink out the house and you as well, this is a really good varnish. This is probably one of their best products. I think a lot of modelers, if they gave this a go, probably would not use any other varnish. It's even pretty good for cars and things. It's not as good as the 2K stuff, but it's pretty good. Alright, so let's just show you what this looks like when I just pour it straight out of the bottle. You can see it is a liquid. I mean, you can put that in a 0.3 or a 0.4, 0.5 airbrush, something like that, and spray that on, and it will self-level and it'll look nice. No drama. If you do want to thin it, you can use any number of thinners, but something that's more aimed at a pure acrylic, so something like Life Color, Vallejo thinner will work fine. And so any of those will be fine and it'll look good. Okay, that's that. Let's put the lid back on. I don't know if it comes in these small bottles anymore either. I think it comes in bigger bottles now too, if you're wondering about the sizes you can get. Definitely worth checking out though. They've got the satin, they've got the matte, and they've got this gloss. I particularly like the satin, which looks more like a matte to me. I'll show you an example actually. This is my little Space 1999 moon buggy, which has got one part to go on it before it's finished. And I keep putting it off. This has been done in the gloss and then had the satin sprayed out of the top when I was finished. Not all of it, because some parts are still gloss because I wanted it to be a mix. But the actual buggy, the yellow if you like, that's all the satin finish. To me that looks absolutely fine for military vehicles, even though it says satin, because it is fairly flat And if you put weathering stuff on top of that, then I don't think you need to worry about putting matte down, to be honest. But that's up to the individual, I guess, how you feel about it. When spraying the stuff, make sure that your airbrush is clean. If it's not clean, clean it. So I'm just doing that now. And also make sure that your airbrush, might use another airbrush actually. The airbrush hasn't got any airbrush cleaner in it, because that almost certainly is not going to end well. Okay, so the airbrush I use typically for spraying clear coats on my cars, planes, tanks, whatever it might be, is this Badger airbrush. This is a Patriot, I think it's called. The reason I like this one is because it's got a larger cup, which is handy for doing car projects and trucks and things. And it's also got quite a large needle. I think this is it's a 0.5. So it'll spray this stuff all day without the slightest problem. Which for gloss coats is great, because what we're trying to achieve is a wet coat. Which I'll show you in a sec, just as soon as I plug this thing in. Give me a sec. Okay. So, yeah, our goal is to basically put a wet coat on. So don't put it on so it's like a thin coat, so like it's dry. So you sort of put gloss coats on really wet. You put satin coats on wet, at least with this stuff, and you put matte coats on with a dusting. Now, if you can remember that, no matter what varnishes you use, you'll be fine. Now I've got to find something I can use to hold that Spitfire while I'm painting it. Just look through my little stash here, see what I've got. Something. Is there something there? That probably will do it. I think. Will that do it? It's a bit dodgy, but that end. Is that end better? Not really the grip onto. That's the problem. I'm not going to worry about those little bits that are... no, I'm not going to worry. I'll put the clear coat on and worry about them later. Can't be bothered. Fix those in post. Okay. Yeah, that should hold it enough once I get to the point. Okay, I'm going to switch cameras now, so you can see what I'm doing at the spray booth. Okay. So model. So we're going to put the gloss coat on. I'm going to put the air pressure up. I had it about 10 psi for those effects I was doing. I've got this a bit above 20 because this is a fairly big airbrush. I'm trying to pump the air through, and I might wind it down a bit once we get started and I know how it's going to look. I think you can see me on camera there. Yep. All right, so let's just start over here at the edge. I've got a problem already. Give me a sec just to dial in the airbrush here. Just getting any water out of the line before I start. Okay, we're in business. Well, we're sort of in business. spraying terrible. Okay. I don't know what's wrong with that airbrush, but that's not the way that's supposed to work. I'm hoping it's not the varnish. So I'm going to have to go and find another airbrush. Give me a sec. Find what I'm looking for. Just have to give this other one a quick clean. I'm not going to put. I'm just going to clean the needle. I'm not going to clean the inside of the airbrush layer because, like I said, I don't want to contaminate the varnish with the cleaner. So hopefully this will be enough to give me the finish I want. I don't know what's wrong with that airbrush though. I did put some new parts in it, so maybe I haven't quite got that right. Let's just tip out the varnish. Okay, we'll try this one. Yeah, that looks better. This is a 0.3. This is my regular one I did the model with. That's going on okay. Now I'm putting this on fairly thick here just because I've got to fix up the spraying from the other airbrush, so it's probably not a good example, but give me a minute. One of the characteristics of VMS that helps is it does self-level really well. So if you don't go too crazy, even when you put it on thick, you'll get away with it. Like I'm doing here, and this is not spraying properly. So I think this VMS varnish might be a little bit on the dodgy side too. I haven't had a problem with this before. I know because of how it's actually what's used in it, that it's probably impacted by the cold more than anything. And in Tasmania we do get cold. A bit more like UK weather than what you'd probably think of for Australian weather. But anyway, it's gone on. You can see it's very wet. You can see the gloss on it, but it's not gone on evenly, which is really annoying. It's salvageable, but it's not something I expect to have to deal with. Alright, so I'm going to put any more than that because I'm going to end up having runs. And that's used up more varnish than I originally planned as well, so that's kind of interesting. But it is already starting to self-level. I think you can see that. I think you can see it starting to smooth itself out. So it'll be fine at the end of the day, but I've just got to be a bit careful how I handle it because it's very thick on the model. So, I think we might try and do the upper wings first. Sick. Very important to get in the winger root there so you don't end up with orange peel. Okay, so I've run out. I have to go and refill my cup and put some more varnish in because I had to put such a thick coat in there on the bottom wings. So I'm just going to rest it there for a sec. I hope that I don't get it wrong. Let's mix up a bit more. You know what? I think I'll just put it on neat and show you what it looks like neat. So you can see here I'm just adding it straight into the airbrush this time. Okay. You know what? It's spraying better. Interesting. Must not like that varnish. That thinner. Interesting. Well, there you go. I've learned something. I thought it worked with all the basic colors. I've used it normally with Vallejo, so didn't like the light colour look of things. Okay, so now we're up to the tricky bit. Let's see how we go. I'll try a little bit higher pressure and see if that helps. Still aiming to get a wet coat though, and that is helping. Because I'm using it neat, the oh yeah, no, that's working much better. There you go, I don't think it liked the light colour thinner. That was all it was. Now it's behaving a lot more like what I expected to. Okay, well, we've learned something new then. Now the tricky bit. Because the model always tilts the way you don't want it to. Come on. Work with me, mate. What I'm doing here is I'm just trying to see, basically looking like water on it. So that's what a wet coat is. You can see the varnish. This stuff self-levels beautifully. Don't worry about obscuring your details and your panel lines and things. It's pretty amazing stuff, to be perfectly honest, how well it works. That won't be a problem. Yeah, no, you can see that was the problem. You can see that that top has gone on much nicer, and you can see the gloss is already starting to level out on the wings. It's pretty amazing stuff, I have to say. So maybe I shouldn't have tried thinning it. I think the moral of the story is there. I should have just upped the pressure and sprayed it directly from the bottle. You can thin it. It does say in the instructions you can thin it, but I don't think it liked the light colour. Now the other thing this does is, for want of a better term, it unifies the colours. I don't know if that's a word, I think it is. But basically it just sort of blends them together in a nice way. That starts really to make the model look more like it's not made out of separate pieces. I don't know how to describe it to you, but to the eye, it looks better. The downside to this approach is it's killing some of the contrast that I had, and that's why when I did the original painting and I put some contrast on the model, I said it was fairly thick, it was fairly strong, and I said I'm not worried about that. As we get further in the weathering, it'll sort of fix itself, and it does. I think you can see it there. It's still drying, by the way, because that was quite thick underneath. But you can see it's sort of blending it together a bit more. So now the plane certainly looks serviced. Certainly looks like it's been through, some service, but it doesn't look like it's not looked after, which is the key thing, because pilots don't like planes that aren't looked after, and I don't think anyone that's like any sergeant or whatever that's responsible for this aircraft would like it either. It's their plane. I mean, the ground crews consider it to be their plane. The pilot just borrows it, and yeah, sometimes operationally they don't have the time to put in with these that they'd like, but you know, when they can, they'll look after them. All right, so that's where I'm going to leave it. That'll I'm just going to let that dry for a bit, so I'm going to have to do a trick and stick that in the drawer, jam the end in the drawer so it can sort of sit like that and dry overnight, and in the morning that'll be fine. And then next video when we get back together, you'll see what that gloss finish looks like. It won't go super glossy like a 2K, but it will lead to a very nice smooth gloss coat, and it's pretty much idiot proof, which is the other thing with this VMS stuff. So again, if you haven't checked them out between videos, you might want to go and have a look at them. Have a look at their website, just put in VMS and you'll find them, and you can see what they're all about. They've got a heap of products there, some really good weathering products as well. Alright guys, well that'll do me for now. Thanks for joining me, and I'll catch you on the next video. Cheers.